Hello my lovely people. I get asked a lot of times what to look for when buying a film camera and lenses, so I thought it would be a really good opportunity to put together a little video to show you how to buy a film camera and lenses. Now I realise for a lot of people that might be a bit difficult to go out and try and buy things right now. A lot of places are closed because of the Rona, but if you can get out there, please do go and support your local camera store. They need you more than ever right now. If you can't, there are lots of great places online that are reputable where you can buy items, Japan Camera Hunter, and places that don't have ratings like Super Mint Plus 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 and Super Fresh Minty Fresh Mint Top Mint. We're trying to buy a camera, not toothpaste. Anyway, without further ado, why don't we go up and see how we can find the right camera and lens for us and what to look for. See you up there. But before we get too far into it, I should probably talk to you a little bit more about ratings. Ratings are, people put a lot of importance in them, but they are very subjective, as you saw on eBay with the whole Minty Plus 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 thing. Now, I'll give you a little bit of a tip that was given to me by my mentor when I started doing this, and he said mint means like a freshly minted coin, which means it is new. It is like new. So there cannot be a mint plus, 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 plus. There cannot be a super mint, a top mint. That doesn't work. There is merely mint and then everything else beneath it. So mint would be something like this. This is a new camera. This has not been used. It is mint. It's still in its box. This, on the other hand, is not mint. It's not even close to it. It's had plenty of use, lots of marks, scratches, dings and dents, but still a very good camera. Always try and find a dealer or a seller that is using proper terms to describe and has a consistent and accurate description system and grading system for their items, and you should be fine. So, for the first thing, the most obvious perhaps, the visual inspection. I've got a few props here so we can sort of get through an idea of what we're looking for, but you're going to start to want to look at the item, look at the camera first, see if it's got any scratches, dings, dents, marks. Look all over and you can see where there are marks. You can see if it's had a knock, and in some cases, in many cases in fact, having scratches and marks on your camera does not matter. In fact, for older cameras, patina is more desirable. People want those marks, those scratches, a lifetime of use. I know I certainly do. But other people want brand new items with nothing on them, absolutely flawless. So make sure you look visually. First of all, check the camera. Has it got any dents in it? That could imply that the camera, or lens in fact, has been dropped. And if that's the case, it may be better to just walk away because there could be significant internal damage. If you know that item has been repaired and serviced, then maybe you'll be all right. It can in fact help you out on getting a better price. But yes, take a good look at the camera, open it up if you need to, or if you in fact you should open it up. Make sure that everything's clean. Make sure that everything fits. It's not too tight. I bought one of these once and the base plate just wouldn't come off because it had been dropped. Make sure everything's smooth, and important, give it the sniff test. Give your cameras a sniff. Has this camera lived with a smoker? Does it smell moldy? Does it smell perhaps damp or wet, or in fact overly dry? These can also be things that you will get to understand as you handle more cameras. Now, with Leica cameras in particular, you've got the vulcanite, this leatherette on the outside. So have a good look at it. Make sure it's got no cracks in it, and make sure you can feel if it's dry. And if it is, maybe you're going to need to change that at some point. Not all cameras have that. Other cameras have rubber grips and bits of rubber. So have a look at the rubber on the camera. Is it white? Is it cracked? Is it fading? Is it peeling? Rubber can be fixed as well with leather cleaner and things like that. You can use that to reinvigorate the rubber on the camera. So yeah, go over the outside of the camera, make sure that everything's tickety-boo, there's no major issues with the outside, and then you can start actually looking at the functions of the camera inside and the viewfinder and see how they go. Okay, so you've done a visual inspection of the camera, but and I think this is something that I should tell you, it's quite important. Don't get overly excited about something, particularly something you really desire. Don't get overly excited and perhaps miss things, right? I know I've been guilty of it. I've been so consumed by how rare or special something is that I haven't looked at it properly. You get overwhelmed by how excited you are and you miss things. So take your time. It's not a race. You can take your time to have a look at something and take your time to check something properly. And if you're not sure, it gives you the opportunity to walk away and not make a mistake. So now we're on to the next bit. We're going to check the functions. You want to make sure that the speed's working, the shutter's firing properly, the functions work properly. Now on some cameras that can be pretty easy with the Leicas, you know, there isn't that much to check. But on other cameras, like the Machina here for example, you're going to have to check that the bellows don't have any holes in them. You're going to have to check that the functions are smooth on the rangefinder and the focus is working. Then you're going to want to open the back door of the camera and give it again the sniff test. Make sure that the seals, and this is important, the foam seals on the camera, because these can deteriorate really easily and flake off into the camera, which can be pretty nasty. And there's a good example of that with my Chinon Bellamy, which is absolutely revolting inside as it's fallen apart. But this doesn't have to be a deal breaker. In fact, this can actually help you again get a lower price, because these are easy to replace and you can buy the foam, you can do it yourself. You don't even have to send it off to a place to do it. So you could get yourself a cheap camera, replace the film, replace the seals, and you'll be good to go, which I really should do with that at some point. With the Leicas and with other cameras, you know, always check the shutter speeds, make sure the shutter speeds are working properly. With, I think, a lot of Nikons, that's pretty easy because they're almost always on. But, I mean, for example, with this lovely M2 here, check it at the lower shutter speeds and see how they are. That should be 1 second. Not so sure about that. If you've got a watch with a seconds hand, or even if you just any watch, as long as it tells you the seconds, you can time it against your watch and see if it's accurate, which this one is. Now, that's important because the slower speeds are more susceptible to issues. And if you've got issues in the slower speeds, it means that your camera in the higher speeds as well is not going to be as accurate. You are not going to be able to tell the difference between 500th and 250th of a second through your ears alone, but you can do it at the lower speeds. And if it does have those issues, then you have to consider maybe this isn't the camera for me, because it's probably going to need an overhaul, which is fine with some cameras, but not every camera can be repaired now. Do bear that in mind. Now, some cameras do have quirks about how to fire the shutter, particularly Pentax 6.7 and things like that. If you know that you want to buy a certain camera, before you go and buy that camera, before you even go and look at that camera, download the manual. You can get it off butkus.org. Download the manual and have a look and see how it works. Familiarize yourself with that camera so that when you go in, you're not working blind. That's a really good tip. As long as everything's smooth, there's no major dents, dings, all of the functions seem to be working properly. You've had a look through the finder, everything lines up properly. You've had a look through the screen, everything's clean, there's nothing, great big gobs of dirt in there, there's nothing stinky or sticky or goopy or God knows what about the camera. Then you can start thinking about, you know, asking. Not everywhere will let you do this, okay, but you can ask if you can put a test roll. We have a test roll of film. This is a roll of film that's been put through many cameras, but you can put a test roll, if they'll let you, into the camera and just see how the functions are with the film in, because it does make a difference on some cameras. So ask nicely and always, you know, be polite, be friendly, be charming, don't be demanding, and most camera store owners will accommodate pretty much everything you need to do because they want the sale, of course. So as long as you're good to them, they'll be good to you. Also, when checking a viewfinder, particularly on a rangefinder camera, see if you can find something to check it on. If they'll let you put a lens on, most places will, they'll let you put a lens on the camera. Great, put a lens on, and just check with text or lines that are nearby. You can check with text and lines, because that can help you see if the vertical and horizontal in the finder are in alignment. The vertical is a lot harder to see without some kind of text or something to give you an idea of where the placement is. And again, not such a hard fix, but if it's not aligned straight out of the shot, then you might think to yourself, perhaps this isn't the camera for me. So those are little tips that you can do, which will only take you a few seconds and could save you potentially quite a bit of money. So a quick note on Leica cameras, or generally rangefinders really, but mainly Leica cameras, is that there is no such thing anymore as a cheap Leica. And if somebody is offering you a cheap Leica, chances are it's too good to be true. It's either been nicked or it's damaged. And in some cases, damage internally cannot be repaired. I have seen guys who've spent thousands of dollars on a camera only to find out that it's absolutely toast inside and there's nothing that can be done for it. So you have to make sure when you're buying something like that, you're buying that from somewhere that you trust, okay? Somewhere that you know has got a good policy and is going to look after you. But also, take the time. Don't rush into a purchase. Take the time to look at things properly. Now we have to talk about lenses. This one's important because maybe you're buying a lens only, or maybe you're buying a camera that comes with a lens. So of course, again, you know, the visual inspection, I think that's pretty obvious, but we also want to do a few other things to make sure that everything's working properly. Now, there is one thing you can bring with you, a tool, which you've probably got anyway in your pocket, and that's a phone. And you can use the torch function on your phone. In the old days, I used to carry a pen flashlight around in my pocket or on my keychain, but you don't need one of those now. Little tip though, right? When you're using this torch, to have a look through the lens, because what you're looking for, you're trying to see how clear the lens is. Is there fungus? Is there separation? And the separation you'll see around the edges of the rear elements of the lens, where the lenses have basically become unstuck. Is there dust? Is there anything in there? So you would put your flashlight underneath like that. Now, don't look directly into the lens with your flashlight like dummy here did, and then you have a red spot in your eyes for the next 2 days, okay? Not a particularly smart move, not one of my smartest. Just keep it off to the side, wave it around, give it a good look, and you will be able to see, oh dear indeed. Yep, that one is going nowhere. That one, unfortunately, is full of fungus. But if I look at this one, ooh, peachy, absolutely lovely. A little bit of dust, but a little bit of dust never hurt anyone. It's not a deal breaker. Doesn't matter anyway, this is my lens. So, okay, have a look at the glass. You can do it by holding it up to the light, but it is not going to be as accurate as using a torch. You're going to see all of the flaws there. And if a seller says, oh no, no torches, walk away, because he's got something to hide. Check the focus. How smooth or how stiff is it? This one, this is pretty stiff. I don't want to be messing with that. Feels like the grease is pretty old on that one. This, ooh, lovely, lovely and smooth. But also be looking for any bumps or sticking points or knocks in there, because you might find that those, and again, this is stuff that can be repaired, right? So you could find yourself getting a deal for something. So you've had a look at the focus, you've had a look at that. Check that the aperture is nice and snappy. It's not. Also, give it a shake. Is there anything rattling in there? You know, some lenses will have a rattle because it's part of their mechanism. Pentax K lenses, things like that, will have part of their mechanism. So that's not so useful for them. But particularly for Leica lenses, this thing shouldn't have any shaky bits. It shouldn't have any loose bits on it, okay? Cosmetically, that's entirely up to you how you want it to be, but it should all be stuck together. You shouldn't be able to unscrew anything, and any seller that tells you, oh yes, you can unscrew it, it should do that anyway. they're talking nonsense. They shouldn't be able to do that, apart from the Summicron. So, had a look at that, check the rear mount, make sure everything's fine. Always ask to mount on a camera. Always say, can I put it on a camera, just to see if it fits, if it clicks, if it brings up the right frame lines on the camera, if it's on a rangefinder, but just if it fits, okay? And particularly for lenses with electronic points, electronic contacts on them, you need to make sure that the camera actually recognizes that the lens is on the camera. So always ask them to let you do that, okay? So you've had a look at that, you've shone the light through, you've checked that. Have a look at the blades. Is there any oil on the blades? Now, some people go, oh, it's not such a big deal. Well, it is, because it can get inside things, and it implies that there may be further issues with your lens. And if the oil spots onto the lens itself, that's going to be a real nightmare to clean off. You don't really want that. So try and avoid lenses with obvious oil leaks and things like that. You know, just and again, put it on a camera, make sure that everything's focusing up, make sure everything's running smoothly, and then if you're happy, you should be fine. Little tip about haze and fungus. Some people say yes, haze and fungus can be, you know, cleaned off, but in some cases it's just not worth it. For an expensive lens, yes, but cheaper lenses, it's just not worth it. You can find a better one, okay? Unless you're particularly skillful and like taking those things apart, yeah, it's better to just go and find something else. While you've still got your torch out, you could also do yourself a favour by checking the shutter curtains. Cloth shutter curtains, cameras with cloth shutter curtains like Leicas, and plenty of other cameras. You can get your torch and shine it inside, and make sure there's no pinholes in the shutter, just to do yourself a favour, because otherwise that could be a rather expensive repair later on. Also, while you're at it, on this particular camera, we can see that there is shutter capping, because the shutter is not going all the way back into its transport when it is fired, which means that your exposures are probably not going to be correct, and there might be a little bit of an exposure leak. But we already knew that with this camera anyway, because of the slow shutter speeds. But even without slow shutter speeds, you can always check for shutter capping on a camera like this, just to make sure, and it will save you a lot of trouble later on. Also, batteries, okay? Some people leave the batteries in there forever. So take the battery cover off, and that applies for any camera that takes battery. Take the battery cover off, have a look inside, make sure there's no green stuff, no fluff, no gunk, no corrosion from the battery, which can be cleaned off, but you really would rather not have to deal with it. It's a nightmare. So take the battery cover off and make sure that's nice and clean. And last final one, serial numbers. And this one's an important one to me, because I got absolutely screwed by, I'm not going to mention any names, but I bought a Leica MP6, and the box and the paperwork, the serial number didn't match the camera body. So that's not cool. There are some less than reputable sellers out there that like to just mix and match boxes and change the numbers on the boxes. So always make sure that the numbers match, or make sure that they haven't been tampered with, especially if you're a collector. So that's rather a lot to remember, but use these steps, these tips, these guides, and this can help you find the right camera for you. We're actually going to update the site and put a checklist on there for you, which you can download so you can take in and go through it. Don't rush. Take your time, be calm, use your head, not your heart, and you will find exactly the right camera for you. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe. Come and check out the cameras we've got for sale on JapanCameraHunter.com, and keep shooting film.